Hey everyone, Felix from Nintendo Life here, and yes, I do believe that Breath of the Wild is a better game than Tears of the Kingdom. Here's why. So, there was a lot of stuff that had to go wrong for me to have this opinion, and I've made a little timeline that goes through everything that happened up until Tears of the Kingdom released and everything that happened after, on why some things were maybe ruined for me or why it didn't quite live up to the expectations that I had set itself for it. Now, Tears of the Kingdom was my most anticipated game ever. My hype was through the roof, and Breath of the Wild was my favorite game to date, so there was a lot to live up to. But in the end, there was just a few missteps that Tears of the Kingdom took that just made Breath of the Wild a tiny bit better in my book. So let's go through that timeline. On January 21st, I started my third playthrough of Breath of the Wild. Now, before that, it was still my favorite game of all time, but this time I thought, hey, I want to try a no fast travel playthrough. And let me just tell you, it made me completely fall in love with Breath of the Wild again in a way that I haven't felt that with another game since. I spent around 115 hours in this third playthrough. I started back in January and ended on April 24th. I did all the shrines for the first time. There was sections I had just completely missed in my other two playthroughs, and it was just so magical to really just turn Hyrule upside down and just go into every nook and cranny and try to find all the secrets that game had to offer. Now, the reason I was doing this before Tears of the Kingdom was because Tears of the Kingdom would be using the exact same map as Breath of the Wild. So I wanted to be able to spot all the differences between these two games. Now, this was my personal misstep because I think it made a lot of the exploration of Tears of the Kingdom a bit less special because I had just gone through everything in Breath of the Wild, but we'll get back to that. So on March 28th, so this was while I was playing Breath of the Wild, there was a 10-minute gameplay presentation, and it was actually on my birthday, so that was a really nice gift. I remember watching it and thinking it was absolutely amazing. That was where they showed the weapon fusion mechanic, and they showed off more of the Sky Islands, especially the starting area, and I was just really excited to try this out. In the marketing, I mean, it's even on the box art, but they were really highlighting the Sky Islands. And I was really excited to see what they would do with all these Sky Islands, because you saw the starting area and think, well, if this is the starting area, what on earth can they do after that? There was just so much potential. And that was one of the things that really disappointed me, was how lackluster the Sky Islands were. There were these, I mean, if you look at the map of the Sky Islands, there are so few. It is really the starting area that is the highlight of the Sky Islands, which is really a shame because those first hours in Tears of the Kingdom on the Sky Island is absolutely magical. Everything is so different, and it was a nice change of pace of what Breath of the Wild did. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Let's go back to the launch of Tears of the Kingdom. Actually, just a bit before launch, because I was tasked with doing the video review for Tears of the Kingdom. Now, I was incredibly honored to do this. The problem was that I couldn't get my hands on the game pre-launch. There was a very limited amount of codes available, and the code went to our reviewer, Alana. So she captured footage for me to use in the video, but that also meant that I was completely spoiled on a lot of things, mainly the depths. The depths, I've heard people saying, you know, it was the craziest experience jumping into that crater and just, there was a whole map underneath Hyrule. And man, do I wish I got to experience it like that. Unfortunately, I just saw Alana jump through down there and get to do stuff in the depths. It was not as magical. I mean, I was screaming because it was huge news that I was discovering this, but then when I was actually playing the game, it just didn't hit the same. You know, it's a trade-off. I got to do the review. The review did bonkers. It did really well. So, you know, I would do it any day of the week. But it did make so that the depths didn't feel quite as impactful as it might have with other people. So the launch of Tears of the Kingdom comes around and I go to a midnight launch, which was insanely cool because I'd never been to one of these. In Denmark, Nintendo isn't as big as it is maybe in Japan or the States. I mean, it's still big, but it's mostly PlayStation and PC gaming. That's first. So to see so many people, at midnight on a Thursday evening was really, really special. And it's something I will take with me for the rest of my life. So to anyone who was there at the event, thank you for coming and for, sharing the hype that there was for this game. So I got home, I got the collector's edition, which you can see right there. I booted up the game, played the entire night. I think I stopped then at 8 in the morning. So I got home and I just could not put the game down. It was really magical. I finished the Sky Islands, I got down to Hyrule, and so much had changed. I thought, for sure, Tears of the Kingdom is a better game than Breath of the Wild. No doubt about it. It improves in so many ways. But the more I played, no, actually, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like the more I played, the less fun I had. It was kind of like a switch that hit in my head. I was going around having loads of fun the first week. We were doing loads of videos about Tears of the Kingdom on the channel. I think for an entire month, it was everything but a few videos that were Tears of the Kingdom videos. It was basically just Tears of the Kingdom life. And at some point, something happened where I had the thought, I'm not having as much fun as I thought I would have. I was burned out, and it definitely didn't help that I played Breath of the Wild right up until launch. I finished the third playthrough a couple of weeks before, and on top of that, I was playing through Ocarina of Time for the first time, like while Tears of the Kingdom came and went. So there was a lot of Zelda going on, and I think I was on like a flying platform at some point. I think I was around the desert where it really hit me that, man, I'm just not having as much fun. It's a really difficult feeling to describe. Nothing I was doing was getting that spark in my brain. And that never happened with Breath of the Wild. I never felt bored, or I was just not having fun, or I don't really want to play, because that was what I was feeling with Tears of the Kingdom. And I think that's the main thing. That's the main thing why I don't like Tears of the Kingdom as much as Breath of the Wild, is because if you start feeling a bit bored or like you're not having fun with a game, that already means that a game which I just had fun the entire way, I think personally that's a better game. A game where you feel a bit bored, something is off. And I think what was off, we'll talk about the improvements of Tears of the Kingdom in a bit, but let's talk quickly about the missteps, at least in my book. There was so much more focus on the Hyrule than we already knew. And even though there was improvements like caves and wells, which that is a huge improvement. I loved the caves and wells. There was still that familiarity of the map, which I personally think that they should have made an entirely new map, because what I really liked about Breath of the Wild was that you didn't know what was around the corner. You were looking into this huge map, and everywhere you were looking, you had no idea what you would encounter. I mean, after playing for a while, you would know that you're gonna encounter Apocalypse or whatever, because there's not a whole lot of new enemies, and that's something that Tears of the Kingdom does much better, the enemy variety. Well, there's still a lot of the same enemies, and that is mostly highlighted when you go into the depths. The depths has the same enemies as up above, but they're just corrupted. I mean, there are original enemies down here, but most of them are just, the same enemies, but corrupted with the miasma. It's not miasma. Miasma is that from Mother 3? God, my brain. It was from Eastward. But they were corrupted down there. And the depths, even though it was amazing to get down for the first time for me, even though I was completely spoiled about that, very quickly, it was just apparent that there was not a lot of stuff to do down here. Even though it was the same size as the Hyrule, which is enormous, going down here into the depths, you have your light routes, you have your enemies to battle against, and you have all the small posts. the Yiga clan side quest and all that stuff, which is fun, but it's very minimal. They should have done more with the depths. They should have done more with the Sky Islands. But for all of the missteps they took, they did a lot of stuff. Right now, I just completely forgot to talk about all the abilities and stuff, and we'll do that right after this segment, because my favorite part of Tears of the Kingdom was revisiting all the villages and places you remember and seeing how much it's grown since the last entry. That was what was magical for me in this game, and it was one of the first things I did. I went to Kakariko village, I went to Hateno village, I went to, the Bolson Empire, as I like to call it, and it was so magical to see, how these cities had evolved, how there were now a fashion trend in Hateno village, how there was, all these things had fallen from the sky in Kakariko, but also all the regional phenomena events where you go to, the Rito, the Gerudo, the Gorons, the Sora, and you see how all these villages has changed. There's completely different circumstances surrounding these villages. It is, in my opinion, just what Tears of the Kingdom did best. And now let's talk about the abilities, because the abilities has changed from Breath of the Wild. And I think the abilities are much better. The abilities are insanely cool, and it is absolutely mind-boggling how the developers made that work, how they made it work on the Switch. This game is humongous, and it's only around 15 megabytes. No, that would be insane. It's only about 15 gigabytes. And yeah, absolutely insane. I think my favorite ability is Recall, because there's something so cool about being able to control time. Going through the ceilings, really, really cool, and such a quality of life improvement. It's especially when you have caves. So you just go into the cave, and when you're done, you don't need to go out of it. You just go through the ceiling. I've no idea how they made it work as well as they did. The physics used, when you make a vehicle, so you just put on wheels and stuff and you jump onto it, and now that's a vehicle. Magic, Nintendo. Insane. But that's not to say that the abilities of Breath of the Wild aren't bad either. There were still really cool abilities. They're just inferior to Tears of the Kingdom's abilities. But for me, Breath of the Wild, it wasn't the abilities that made it special. It was the exploration. And to me, Breath of the Wild does it better. In Breath of the Wild, you feel completely alone in this giant world, and you're trying to save this kingdom that almost fell 100 years ago. There are a few villages here and there. There are some people to talk to, but for the most of the time, you're just walking around alone with your own thoughts. Oh, there's some enemies there. Let's go and defeat them. Oh, there's a shrine there. Let's go do that shrine. So you're just left on your own to figure out what you want to do. You can really, like Tears of the Kingdom, you can do it in any order that you want. But Breath of the Wild is a peaceful bliss adventure with a lot of open space, where Tears of the Kingdom is epic thunder with just so much to do that it's almost overwhelming. Breath of the Wild never felt overwhelming. Breath of the Wild felt like it really knew what it wanted to do. And Tears of the Kingdom also really knew what it wanted to do, but it ended up doing a lot of what Breath of the Wild knew what to do. The dragon tears, those are just memories. The temples, those are just divine beasts. And although the lead up to these temples were much cooler, the temples themselves, I feel, are just divine beasts with a new lick of paint. Okay, I'm gonna admit that the temples having unique bosses instead of just having the same exact thing essentially was very, very cool. And they are an improvement over Breath of the Wild. But I was playing Ocarina of Time at the same time, and those dungeons are just on a whole other level. And I wish, especially after playing Ocarina of Time, that Tears of the Kingdom did more with these dungeons and tried to be less Breath of the Wild, because the dungeons of Breath of the Wild, although cool, I never had any problem with them. But after playing Ocarina of Time, it is clear that they are just not the same. You can't even classify them as a dungeon, because so much of what makes dungeon a dungeon is just lost when you do a Divine Beast. It's more just like a puzzle room without any cool new enemies or without any cool environmental stuff, without any of the cool items that you get. And what I'm trying to get at here is that when I played Breath of the Wild, I had nothing to compare to. I hadn't played Ocarina of Time. To me, the Divine Beasts were just dungeons, so I personally didn't have any problem with them. But now I had something to compare to, so when playing Tears of the Kingdom, it is just apparent just how lackluster it is compared to that, and that made my experience worse, unfortunately. So again, another misstep in the wonderful adventure of why I enjoyed my playthroughs of Breath of the Wild more than my playthrough of Tears of the Kingdom. I wish it would just be more Tears of the Kingdom and less Breath of the Wild, because the memories, although it worked really well for Breath of the Wild, I really liked how you were just looking back on all the memories of what happened to this kingdom. In Tears of the Kingdom, it works really weird because it is like the main story. You're following this epic story of what has happened to Zelda, but it is all pieced up in weird places, and you might experience a really big thing before you experience another thing, which really makes that other thing much less impactful. And it gets even weirder because the reason you're going to these regional phenomena is to find out more about where Zelda is. But you find out through these tears, and even though you've seen the tears before you go to them, nothing changes. So this doesn't make any sense. I mean, yeah, we can talk about this a whole lot more. It's a really, really interesting discussion, but I also do want to talk about that there was no DLC for Tears of the Kingdom, because I thought, and a lot of other people thought, that that was a given. And I was also kind of letting the depths and the Sky Islands, the lack of stuff to do there, slide, because I thought for sure that they would do something DLC where there was massive new Sky Islands or there was massive new things to do in the depths, but apparently no. They didn't do that, which was really a shame, and really there was just so much potential for DLC. There's no master mode, which the last playthrough I did of Breath of the Wild was master mode, and really does add a lot because it makes the game much more challenging. All the enemies, I mean, after a while you just get used to it. But it is a much more challenging and, in my opinion, fun experience than just regular Breath of the Wild. And we're not going to have that with Tears of the Kingdom. I was really looking forward to playing through Tears of the Kingdom again with Master Mode and hopefully enjoying it more than it did. I mean, I'm saying I didn't enjoy it. I did enjoy it. I did finish it. I put 110 hours into Tears of the Kingdom, and it's a masterpiece. But Breath of the Wild is the masterpiece of masterpieces. And of course, nostalgia also does play a role into why I enjoy this game over this game. And I think it was just the time I was playing Breath of the Wild. The game came out just at the right moment for me, and I got to play it. I could just tuck myself into bed and play Breath of the Wild and get completely lost in this world. There's this magical feeling. You have it with one game probably yourself. There's just that magical feeling that you get sometime when you're younger playing a game that is very, very hard to replicate. And Tears of the Kingdom did that the initial night I played. It was such a magical experience. And, you know, thinking back, it was just, yeah, it was awesome. So I definitely think that if nostalgia was just not a thing, I would probably not put Breath of the Wild over Tears of the Kingdom, because, I mean, Tears of the Kingdom just improves on so much. But something really interesting that I saw on the internet here the other day, and also why I really wanted to make this video, because for a long time I felt I was kind of alone in this world of Breath of the Wild just being a bit better than Tears of the Kingdom. I felt that everyone, understandably, were just, you know, praising Tears of the Kingdom, saying it was much better than Breath of the Wild. But something changed along the line, and I saw a lot more people saying the exact same thing as me, that even though Tears of the Kingdom is better, Breath of the Wild was just more magical. Now, it's really nice to see. It's always nice when you see other people have the same opinion as you, and it also just made me more comfortable to come here and talk about, because if I had made this video right when Tears of the Kingdom came out, I would be teared to pieces. Maybe I already am in the comments. It doesn't really matter, just because I really wanted to talk about my favorite game of all time. But it's just such an interesting conversation about how an objectively better game can sometimes fall more flat than another game. So to everyone watching, I want to know down in the comments below, why you enjoy one game more than the other, and explain why, because it's such a fascinating topic that I want more people to talk about. I want to read all the comments and see what you all think, and I want to see why you disagree with me, why my opinion is the worst. That is really funny to read about. Or if you agree, also do let me know, because it is nice to not feel completely alone in this Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom opinion world. Well, anyway, thank you so much for watching and for sitting down and listening to just me rambling about two of the best games of all time, and we'll see you in the next one. Stay safe, play some Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and we'll see you in the next one. Felix from Nintendo Life, out.